So, good morning again. We are back to the study of the book Action and Reaction. Today, we are going to study chapter 18, which is a very interesting subject, collective expiations. Last month, we studied a particular case of what's called a debt that being expiated. I didn't bring what we study because it doesn't really have anything to do with the chapter here. It's not a continuation. This is a different chapter. They are back at mention of peace, and we are going to discuss a different subject. So, Zoraida, is it good for you to read? You need to increase the font?
Yeah, please increase it. It's a little...
Okay. Better now?
A little more. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, está bien. Okay, good.
Go ahead.
Should I begin now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Chapter 18, Collective Expiations. We were talking to Silas about a number of issues when we got a call from Druso to meet with him in his private office. The director of Mansau went straight to the point. An urgent appeal from Earth was asking help for the victims of a plane crash. Without wasting time on details, he told us that the request would be repeated in a few minutes and that it was better to wait in order to examine the matter with the necessary efficiency. In fact, he had barely finished speaking when we heard sounds similar to Morse code coming from a curious-looking machine. Druso turned on a nearby switch and we saw a small projector with powerful lenses that began projecting live images onto a screen skillfully set into one of the walls a short distance away. As if watching the news, we were surprised to see the Earth's landscape. Near the peak of a steep jungle mountain, the wreckage of a large plane contained the victims of an accident. One could guess that the pilot must have been blind by the heavy mist coming in front of the ocean and couldn't avoid crashing into the granite peaks, which, silent and implacable, protruded from the mountain like gloomy torrents of a strong fortress. In the midst of this disturbing scenario, an elderly, discarnate man of noble and dignified bearing was making a moving appeal, asking Mansau to send an experienced team to remove 6 of the 14 spirits that had left their bodies in the dolorous tragedy. While Druso and Silas discussed measures to offer assistance, Hilario and I were astonished by the unfamiliar display. The heartbreaking scene seemed to be unfolding right there. 8 of the discarnates were lying in a state of shock, bound to their mutilated or unmutilated bodies. 4 were moaning, yoked to their remains. The 2 others, still shackled to their corpses, screamed desperately in and out of the consciousness. However, selfless and valorous spirits were watching over them calmly and attentively, like a watchful waterfall, like a waterfall of light from heaven. Help from on high was arriving solicitously in a blessed stream of love. The small picture was so real that we could hear the moaning of those who were awakening very weakly, the prayers of the helpers, the conversations of the spirit nurses rendering first aid. We were greatly distressed as the screen went blank, while Silas began carrying out Druso's orders with remarkable efficiency.
Thanks, Zoraida.
Okay.
So very graphic, this first part that we are discussing here. Of course, we're talking about plane accident. Remember, this book was written in the beginning of the 1950s. So Andre Luiz is telling things that happened even before that. Remember, Nosso starts with the Second World War. So this is probably something that happened in the 40s or late 40s, beginning of the 50s, 1940, 1950s. So we didn't have these huge planes that we have today. So when they talk about a plane accident, we had smaller planes, and this was a plane that was carrying 14 people. So today we would call it a small plane accident. He calls here a big plane accident. So they were in Mansion of Peace, talking to Silas, who, if you remember, has been helping them and guiding them through their experiences on Earth, on their assistance. And Druso is the director of Mansão. We saw him in the last chapter, or a couple of chapters ago, when he went to help an incarnated worker of Mansion to receive a newborn baby to help in the reincarnation process. This is a couple of chapters ago, in chapter 16. So here, Druso tells them that there was an accident, and the information, the request to be repeated in a few minutes, and they will have to wait there in a special room to examine the matter with efficiency. And then what's interesting that he says, Andre Luiz says here that they heard sounds similar to Morse code. Remember, again, this is 1950s. TV was already existing, but very, very rudimentary TVs. The communications were doing mostly by telegrams, and telegrams work more or less like Morse code. So Druso turns on a nearby switch, and we saw a small projector. So we're seeing here a modern TV that didn't exist at that time, because Andre Luiz talking about powerful lens projecting the images on a screen on the walls. Most of our TVs nowadays are on the wall, right? The plasma TV. So that was a good 50 years before we had this here on Earth. But we know that what we have here on Earth is a copy of the spiritual world. So we've seen in the Andre Luiz books that things that he describes things of the spiritual world at that time that we see appearing here on Earth later. So he describes the accident. Of course, the pilot must have been blinded by the heavy mist, crashed into a mountain, and there is an elderly discarnate man that is in the place of the accident, by what we can deduct here, asking Mansão to send an experienced team to remove 6 of the 14 spirits that have left their body, the dolorous tragedy. So our first question is, why 6 of 14? This we are going to find out later in the chapter, okay? So why not send help for the 14, but only for 6? It's the question we're going to see later in the chapter, okay? Mm-hmm. So Andre Luiz describes it very in graphic details here that 8 of the discarnates were lying in a state of shock, bound to their physical bodies. 4 were moaning, still attached to their remains, and 2 other also shackled to their corpses, screamed desperately. So this is a description of the victims and a description of the spirits working there, selfless and valorous spirits watching over there calmly and attentively. So help is already there. Now, why, if help is already there, why they're asking for the assistance of Mansion? Because you need specialized help in these cases, and we are going to see later in the chapter Druso describing why the work is being done the way it's being done. Okay, and Andre Luiz then describes that what they are watching in the TV there in the spiritual world was so real that they could hear those suffering. They could hear the prayers of the helpers. They could hear the conversations of the nurses rendering first aid there. Of course, there is always spirits around events like that. Okay, so this first part is really a description of the scene and preparing us for what we are going to learn about an accident. And it's called collective expiations because every time you have an accident like that, it is a collective expiation for this group of people that died in this accident. For us to put into to have a picture of what I like to mention always, right? Of course, this is 1950, so the population of Earth was much smaller. But if we talk about nowadays, the number of discarnates that leave Earth every day is around 150,000. So a quarter of the population of Earth in 1950, it's my guess. Let's say we have 30,000, 40,000 discarnations every day at that time. So an accident that 14 people discarnate is, in the bigger picture, it's not a real number, an impressive number, but the concept here is of collective discarnation because of the rest of the 30,000, 40,000, whatever discarnations that happen in the rest of the world. There will be diseases, will be old age, will be small accidents that kill one or two people. But whenever we have an accident, and we can think of nowadays whenever we have a plane accident that 200 people or 300 people die, it always goes to the first page of the newspapers or first page of the websites nowadays. But it is not a significant number in terms of the number of people that discarnate every day, but it is a significant number because it is a collective discarnation. Okay? Elmo, anything to add here?
Just out of curiosity, at the time of the publication of this book, this very beginning, the explanation of the instrumentation would sound very much like science fiction, right? And could create doubt in many minds. Perhaps I would be one of them. Today is much easier for us to accept those instrumentation, the spiritual world, as something very possible if you do understand that they have better technology than what we have here. It's very likely that they have, of course, that they have a much better technology than what we had then. That is a little bit more similar to what we have today, right? And another comment is the elderly man who asked for help. Did and you're going to continue to read, but I don't know if it does explain who was this guy. He was one of the victims, was a protecting spirit, was just a spirit passing by, was one of the helpers that was unspecialized helper that recognized the need for more specialized help. Is there an explanation on that?
There is no explanation on that. I would imagine a good Samaritan, a spirit that was nearby and goes just there.
Passing by?
Yes. But this is my guess here. It doesn't say anything about this spirit. But because he asked for help means that, an accident in the street, someone passing by, call 911 because doesn't have the ability to help. I think we could call it that. I don't know, but we don't have any explanation, and it doesn't appear anymore. This individual.
I would imagine there is a spirit with some degree of moral evolution to be able to make that contact, right? With
Yes, definitely. Yeah. But also a spirit that understands his position, right? And his limitations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Soraya.
Okay. In a few minutes, several workers from the institution were on their way to the accident. We were waiting for Silas when he returned to Druso's office, where he and the director continued discussing the task at hand. Hilario and I asked if we can take part in the relief effort, but Druso kindly explained that this work was highly specialized and required trained workers. When we saw that the kind mentor could dedicate a little more time to us, we took advantage of the opportunity to address the issue of collective trials. Hilario spoke first, respectfully asking the reason for the request for help in the removal of only 6 of the discarnates when there were 14 in all. Druso replied firmly and serenely, "Help at the plane crash is given indiscriminately. However, we must remember that even though the disaster is the same for all who have died, death is different for each one of them. For the time being, only those whose inner life warrants their immediate deliverance will be removed from their bodies. As for the others, whose present situation does not warrant a quick separation from the physical armor, they will stay attached to their remains for a long amount of time." "For how long?" asked my colleague, incapable of containing his emotions. "It all depends on the degree of animalization of the fluids that are holding their spirits to their bodies," answered our mentor. "Some will remain for a few hours, others for several days, perhaps, who knows? A lifeless body doesn't always mean that the soul has been set free. The kind of life we nourish in the physical realm determines the true conditions of our death. The more we wallow in the currents of lower illusions, the more time we will need to exhaust all the vital energies that bind us to the heavy primitive matter that comprises our physiological instrumentation as we flounder around in the lower mental creations to which we have become accustomed, finding in them the fluid of extensive wrongs in the darkness of the corporeal realm. The more we submit ourselves to the disciplines of the spirit, which recommend balance and sublimation, the easier it will be for us to leave the flesh as a result of any emergencies that we cannot avoid due to debts contracted before the law. Thus, physical death is not a synonym for spirit emancipation. However, I considered that doesn't mean that the other victims won't be assisted while temporarily confined to their remains. Not at all, added our kind friend. No one is without help. God's infinite love embraces the whole universe. Thus, who stay behind, entangled in the lower tiers of the physical experience, will slowly realize the help they are capable of receiving. "But," said Hilario, "won't they be at the mercy of perverse discarnates if they cannot be rescued immediately?" With a significant facial expression, Druso considered. "Yes, if they are death to the good, it is possible that they will yield to suggestions of evil, so that through the torments of evil, they may return to the good. However, one must remember that temptation is always a shadow tormenting our lives from the inside out. The communion of our souls with the infernal powers is directly related to the hell we harbor within us." The explanation could not have been clearer.
Okay, thanks, Soraya. You can see that I marked a lot of things here because I think there is so much here for us to remind ourselves. We know all this information. We have studied this. We know how the process of discarnation happens. We know that the difference between death and discarnation, death is of the physical body. Discarnation is the separation of the spirit from the physical body. These are two different things. that happen at different times. They can happen almost simultaneously. They can take longer. The complete separation in terms of matter takes up to 72 hours, according to Emmanuel. But the mental connections between the spirit and the physical body can take a very long time to disconnect. So the first thing here, that several workers from the institution were on the way to the accident, and Andre Luiz and Hilario immediately asked if they could take part in the relief effort. And of course, Andre Luiz is always willing and wanting to participate, to learn, and with Hilario, but Druso doesn't allow them to go, because he says that this work was highly specialized and required trained workers. We'll see later that it's not only that. There is another reason that Druso doesn't allow them to go, and we'll learn later. So, but that's, of course, that is a very good reason, right? If you need someone to help in an accident, you send the team that is specialized in retrieving victims from an accident. Here in the physical world is the same, right? You don't send the surgeons to the street to rescue victims of accidents. They are in the hospital waiting for them to be taken to the hospital. Of course, in an emergency, they can help, but it's not their responsibility or part of their job to go to the street and help with victims of accidents. For this, you have specialized teams. So that's what Druso tells them. And then Hilario asks the question that we mentioned before, the first part, which is the question that we all were curious, right? Why only 6 of the discarnates when there are 14 at all, in all? And Druso answers importantly here: help at the plane crash is given indiscriminately. So everyone receives help. It's not that some receive help and others don't. Help is given to everyone. Now, there is a difference between those that are open and ready to receive help, and there are those that are not ready to receive help or close themselves to receive help. So there are different situations. As he says here, death is different for each one of them. So the 6 are those whose inner life warrants their immediate deliverance, and they will be removed from their body. So these 6 that were immediately rescued are those that have an intellectual understanding, not necessarily, a moral evolvement in terms of being more spiritual than physical. Yes, that's what these 6 are. It doesn't matter if they know or do not know about life in the spiritual world, but they are spiritual in the sense that they have an acceptance and an understanding that life continues, and they led their life morally outright, in a right way, in terms of they prepare themselves during their physical life for their eventual discarnation. So because it happened in an accident, they receive immediate assistance. As for the other 8, whose present situation does not warrant a quick separation, they are going to stay attached for the remains for a longer amount of time. Again, the first question that Hilario comes with is, for how long, right? And then Druso explains that depends on the degree of animalization of the fluids that are holding their spirits to the body. What does he mean by that? We are all We all have vital fluids here. We come to the physical world with vital fluids. When we die of old age or as a consequence of a disease that slowly deplete our physical body of vital fluid, when we discarnate, when our physical body dies, there is no vital fluid left, or almost none. When we die in an accident, we still have a lot of vital fluid in our physical body. And for those that are prepared for the 6 that were immediately rescued, the spirits are able to remove and disperse the vital fluids so they can be helped and assisted. Those that are not ready and they are still attached to the physical body for several different reasons, they remain attached to the physical body mentally. So the soul has not been set free. It could be a few hours, could be for several days, could be even longer. So Druso explains the kind of life we nourish in the physical realm determines the true condition of our death, of our discarnation. So depends on how much we are attached to material life. It's not necessarily to the physical body. And we discussed this many times when we're studying the Spirit's book, right? Where you find yourself when you discarnate depends on your mental state. We can stay attached to our physical body. We can stay attached to the place we used to live. We can stay attached to our addictions, walking around those people that fulfill our material desires, or we can be helped and assisted, taken to the spiritual world. In the book Workers of Eternal Life that we studied before on the same collection, we studied 5 cases of discarnation. For those that want to go back to read it, there is a lot of information on discarnations there, from Dimas, the first one, to Fabricio, to Albina, the more evolved, more prepared spirits, less prepared spirits, all of them receiving the assistance of another transitory house of assistance that Andre Luiz was working with in the book. So he explains here that it depends on where are our energies, how much we are connected to the physical body, how much we are connected to the material life that we were leading. And again, it's important to understand here that it's not because we like very much the house we live, because we lived in the house for the last many years. We like the house. It does not mean that we are attached to the house. Really, the attachment here means we cannot live without feeling that we are leaving behind something that belongs to us. So when we have the understanding of everything that we have in the physical life belongs to us temporarily when we are incarnated, but that we are not going to carry it back with us to the spiritual world. And we are at peace with that, understanding that the house that we live and love, we're not going to take with us. We're fine with it. The nice car or the old car that we have, that it helps us here in the physical world, but when we leave the physical world, we don't no longer need it, and we are fine with it. People that remain attached to it, that doesn't understand our life as spiritual beings, are the ones that stay back attached. Of course, help is available. So let's say someone that has not a a clear understanding of life in the spiritual world, that things that we, there may be life in the physical world, but they are very worried about the physical life and all the things that happen in the physical life. But they led a good life. They did all they could to help others, their family, workers. They didn't make any grave errors in terms of behavior. They led a good life. They are going to receive the assistance, and they will learn very quickly the moment they get their understanding. So in the case of the accident, let's say the other 8, if one of them is prepared and has the capacity of understanding their situation, and they are going to receive this assistance, and it's going to be easier, the transition, different from those that are attached to the physical body, attached to the material life, doesn't want to live it, doesn't understand that we have a spiritual body, and remains pretty much connected and attached to the physical body. So as Druso said here on the top, death is different for each one of them. So each one of the 14 people there are going to have different experiences, but they can be divided in groups on how they receive the assistance. So Druso is explaining here, the more we submit ourselves to the disciplines of the spirit, which recommend balance and sublimation, the easier it will be for us to leave the flesh as a result of any emergencies that we cannot avoid. Meaning, these people had to die in the accident for some reason of the past, and we are going to see a case here later in this chapter. But they were prepared for the event by their moral evolution and their behavior in the physical life. So he says here, physical death is not a synonym of spirit emancipation. Andre Luiz mentions that doesn't mean that the other victims won't be assisted. And Druso says no one is without help. God helps everyone. Those who stay behind will slowly realize that the help they are capable of receiving. But then Hilario asked the question, right? Won't they be at the mercy of perverse discarnates if they cannot be rescued immediately? And Druso says, yes, if they are deaf to the good, it is possible that they will yield to suggestions of evil, so that through the torments of evil, they may return to the good. For those, I know we mentioned a lot the movie Ghost. Now it's a movie that has, a 30, 40 years old movie, so many people don't remember. But the criminal there in Ghost, he's taken by inferior spirits, right? The dark shadows that come and collect him, right? So he's completely deaf to the good, and he's going to connect with the inferior spirits that are going to rescue him. So what Druso is saying here is, depending on whom we connect through our mental vibrations, we are going to be open or not to receive the help and assistance of evolved spirits. And if we are not, the temptation is always a shadow tormenting our life from this inside out. So the communion of our souls with the infernal powers is directly related to the hell we harbor within us. Okay, so this is the explanation of how the rescue is done for these 14 discarnated spirits that are dying together in a collective expiation. Elmo, anything to add here?
No, Ron, I think it's very interesting, and I think you covered everything. It's just a comment. We always say, and I believe rightly so, of course, that the death of the body of a healthy, strong, let's say 20 years old, full of vital fluid, would be a little bit more complicated separation than a 98 years old with lots of chronic disease that separation would be easier, some of the separation already taking place. And yet, the most significant and important point is not even that, is really the moral qualities of the individual. The 20 years old may be a lot less detached to material things, and you'll be so much ready to receive the assistance for a quick separation than perhaps than materialistic, selfish pride 80 years old may stay longer connected to that body. And I was just thinking that we see, especially with one specific medium of ours, quite a good number of spirits who come, and they are definitely there at the moment in the environment of the death, in which the spirit keeps repeating the scene of the moment of the death of the physical body, with not realizing, most of them not realizing at all that they are no longer dead, because they're so strongly attached to that matter yet that they are not even though they are receiving help, they are ready to be helped. That's why they come to the center. It's very difficult to take them away from that moment of that trauma.
Ebony.
Yes, my question is to do with the anonymous benefactor who was present at the site of the crash, who asked for the help for the six. I'm wondering whether, would the six still receive the help if he had not been there, if he had not requested the assistance? I mean, I'm also wondering if the universal law that governs our lives, I mean,
Great
doesn't it
question.
doesn't it work independently of, of anyone asking for specific help on our behalf, based on our merits and demerits? It has me wondering, I mean, of all the disasters that take place in the world, I mean, is there somebody or a group of people who have to request help on their behalf in order for them to get help? I mean, it's just something that I'm wondering.
I think it's a great question, a wonderful question.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer.
Okay.
My answer would be yes. Everybody, the Druso said over there, everyone receives help regardless, right? So I think that kind of answers when he says that. But then it comes to the question: so why did it have to receive that call over there?
Yeah, I think that my understanding here is that he was the one that was around the scene there, right? That was first at the scene or something like that. He understands that he needs he's not able to deal with that. He needs more people, and he asks for help. So the number of spirits in the spiritual world around Earth is 3 times the number of incarnates. So there are many spirits around. When we think of, let's think about our here in the physical world, right? Here, if something happens here, a lot of people, if there is an accident here in New York City, which is crowded all the time, someone will call 911 immediately for the ambulance or for the fire truck or something else, right? For the help and assistance. There is always one person that is going to take the initiative. If there is nobody, no spirits around there, which is a question that I don't think it is necessarily true. There is always spirits everywhere. So when there is a plane flying with 14 people, there are spirits that are accompanying the plane there, accompanying the passengers. There are spirits that, what happened to when we talk about obsessors, right? they follow they're obsessed everywhere. So if you fly on a plane, the obsessor is going to go with you in a plane. If your familiar spirits, they have the possibility of knowing beforehand that this accident is going to happen, and they are going to follow their family member to ask for help when the accident happens. So again, I'm just theorizing here different scenarios. When Druso says that no one is left without assistance, this is not a theory. This is what really happened. So we are always assisted. We have always spirits available to help us. Depends on us opening to receive the help. So I think, and again, when we talk about helping others, right? This spirit took on himself the responsibility of asking for help. So he's doing the work that helps him grow spiritually, because he asks for help and assistance. He stays there until the assistance arrives. Then he may help or move away, go to wherever he was going. So my understanding here is that when I pray to Jesus, why doesn't Jesus come directly to help me? Well, Jesus helped me indirectly through all the spirits that are my familiar spirits, my guardian angel, and all the spirits that are ready to help me, because it is our responsibility to help and assist and do the work. So for us to do the work, the spirits above us need to allow us to do the work. Can Jesus come and solve the question that I'm asking? Of course he can, but the work is done as a group, and the work is done by everyone. So this individual that was there, we don't have any more information on him, but he was there for some reason, either accompanying one of the victims of the accident, or passing by and saw the accident, vibrating at the same mental vibration of someone in the plane. There are many different situations and reasons that he could be there. Now, what he had that also doesn't explains here, why did he call mention of peace? Because he was very likely a spirit connected to mention of peace directly through, like many of that we saw in this book, right? So why did he call mention of peace and he didn't call Nosso Lar? That was called when the Second World War started. Andre Luiz sees the calls arriving at Nosso Lar, asking for preparing Nosso Lar for the help and assistance. Again, I don't have a clear answer, but the answer here is that these spirits, there are always spirits ready and available to help. So we don't know why it was specifically this spirit, but we can speculate that he was either connected to one of the victims or he was passing by, but for sure he was connected to mention of peace, because that's where he called and asked for help. And mention of peace, if there are several spiritual colonies throughout the world, and why mention of peace in this case? Because likely they were the closest one that could send help and assist them. Any agreement or disagreement here, Elmo? No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I was
mute. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Everything you said, especially like the point that you bring, that God helps us through us, right? God could do anything he wants. He could put honey in our table. He didn't need the bees, but He created the bees to provide the honey and gave us intelligence to figure out a way to take the honey from the bees and put it on our table. So the divine providence is there for everyone, but we need to do our part. And I think especially I like that God offers us the opportunity of putting our goodness to work, and that Spirit used that opportunity. And I keep imagining that how many opportunities we missed of doing the good that we could have done.
Yeah, you think of the parable of the Good Samaritan, right?
Yeah.
Two were given the opportunity to help the victim and pass by without providing help because for different reasons they didn't want to help. They were given the opportunity. The third one was the one that took the opportunity and helped the victim, and it became the Good Samaritan. So, opportunities are available for all of us all the time. If we take the opportunity or not is a personal choice according to our free will, right? Okay, Zoraida, let's continue.
Okay, yes. Perhaps that is why Hilario, somewhat disconcerted by this direct clarification, but as eager as I was not to miss the opportunity to discuss the matter some more, pointed out humbly, "Noble instructor, of course we do not have the right to question any determination that derives from your authority. Nonetheless, I would very much like to delve deeper into reasons as to why we cannot take part in the work of assistance in collective expiations. Couldn't we help the Institute's workers on their rescue expeditions to the victims of various accidents so that we can research what caused them? Surely, Mansal's responsibilities must include assistance of this type every day." Well, almost every day. Duso corrected him promptly. And gazing at Hilarios in a singular way, he continued, "You must realize that you are collecting didactic material involving the awakening of our incarnate brothers and sisters, almost all of whom are undergoing an important stage of their struggle to pay their debts to divine justice. If you were to analyze expiations of this kind, you would inevitably be compelled to examine in detail situations and problems that can create destructive images in the minds of many of those you intend to help." Half smiling, revealing the humility that adored his admirable spirit, he added, "I don't think we can comment on a large disaster in the human realm without imparting the virus of fear, so often the bearer of discouragement and death." Our instructor's serene and evangelical words readjusted our unconstructive impulses. No doubt the earth is full of souls just like us, chained to their difficult commitments, yet not committed to persistently working on recovering their balance. It wouldn't be just to torment them with thoughts of fear and affliction, when by constantly practicing the heartfelt good, we can hour by hour remove the clouds of probable suffering from our horizons. Noticing our unmistakable attitude of understanding and obedience, the Institute's head paused briefly and continued, "Let's suppose that you were to analyze what caused the ordeal of today's accident victims. You would discover moral delinquents who, in other lifetimes, pushed defenseless brothers or sisters from the top of high towers so that their bodies would smash on the ground. Fellow spirits who, in the past, committed heinous crimes at sea by drowning precious lives, or suicides who jumped from tall buildings or high peaks in a supreme display of rebelliousness before the law, and who at that moment could find no other recourse than such a dreadful act to change their situation. How many thoughts of incarnate brothers and sisters there are now, whose debts before the divine tribunals are of such kinds. As in debt consciousness, we know that we can improve our credit every day. How many earthly travelers, whose road maps include awful surprises, are duly watched over so that sudden death does not assault their body due to their praiseworthy acts. How many ardent and intercessory prayers win timely moratoriums for individuals who are close to the grave. For the souls who graciously accept them, how many sacrificial duties win them precious advantages in the greater life, where measures are taken to mitigate the rigors of the trials they have to endure. We know very well that if a sound wave meets another in such a way that the peaks of one overlap the valleys of the other, there is no vibration, and the result is silence. Likewise, by generating new courses with the good we do today, we can interfere in the courses of evil we set in motion yesterday, thereby neutralizing them and restoring our equilibrium. Thus, I think it better to encourage working for the good with all the resources at hand: charity and worthwhile learning, faith and goodwill, optimism and work, art and constructive meditation are renewing themes whose merit we must not neglect in the rehabilitation of our ideas and consequently our destinies.
Thanks, Fred.
You're welcome.
So here we reached the point where Hilario and Andre Luiz learned why they were not allowed to go there with the team to assist the victims. So that's the question that Hilario asked: couldn't we help? And Druso says that almost every day the Mansão has similar situations that they have teams that provide assistance. So why Andre Luiz and Hilario were not allowed to go in this mission? Well, Druso explains that Andre Luiz is collecting material to bring to us the realities of the spiritual world. So he's collecting didactic material involving the awakening of our incarnated brothers and sisters, which are us. And we are all here struggling to pay our debts to divine justice. If Andre Luiz, so basically the explanation that he gives is the following. We already saw the description, the graphic description of Andre Luiz from the accident, right? That he talks about the victims attached to the physical bodies and things like that. If Andre Luiz goes in the team and Hilario goes with the team to help and assist those, there they would become more aware of each case there, the 6 ones, why they were able to be rescued. There are 8 other that were not able to be rescued immediately. And the description that Andre Luiz would give to us would be more harmful than helpful to us, because most of us are still very impressionable in terms of what we read, what we learn. The book Memoirs of a Suicide is a very good, intense, and very important book for us to learn the consequences of suicide and how the assistance is provided in the spiritual world. A lot of people cannot read the book. Even spiritists that are in Spiritism for many years have difficulty in reading the book and in not getting impressed or negatively affected by the images they create from the book. Andre Luiz gives us a lot of graphic explanations of things of the spiritual world, which is fine, because when we talk about liberation and we go deep into the infernal zones and see the descriptions of Gregorio, it helps us prepare ourselves better for our experiences in the spiritual world. But descriptions of physical things that happen in the physical world, graphic descriptions, we are not ready to to receive that that help and assistance. So the description. So that's what he mentions in terms of not allowing Andre Luiz and Hilario to go there in the rescue team. So I don't think we could comment on a large disaster in the human realm without imparting the virus of fear, so often the bearer of discouragement and death. So that's why they were not allowed. And I think it's a very, very good justification of what happened there, right? He talks about, then he goes a little deeper, describing that we here on Earth, we are still not, many of us are not ready to deal with our past, and we wouldn't be just to torment us with thoughts of fear and affliction, when on the other hand they could give us incentive for practicing good, teachings of moral elevation, and not bring us more fear of things that are happening around us every day, because accidents of this type and collective discarnations are happening every day around us, and we need to prepare ourselves for our discarnation in terms of having a moral preparedness for it, right? So if Andre Luiz, he says, if Andre Luiz and Hilario were there, they would discover on the victims, delinquents that committed crimes that are related to dying in a plane accident, right? So throwing defenseless people from high towers, crimes at sea, drowning precious lives, suicides that jump from high buildings. And so we are not prepared to receive this kind of information according to those that these more evolved spirits in the spiritual world. But also a phrase that he says here, how many ardent intercessory prayers win timely moratoriums for individuals who are close to the grave. Again, we go back to the book Workers of Life Eternal. There is one specific case that the lady was close to discarnating, and but because one of her granddaughters was pregnant and could suffer the consequence of her discarnation could affect the pregnancy and cause difficulties, she received a moratorium of 6 months so that the pregnancy could go to term. So we know that these intercessory prayers help those in need, and the understanding of their existence. As he says here, as indebted conscience, we know that we can improve our credit every day through prayers, through working, doing sacrificial duties that win precious advantages in the greater life. So when he talks about when we know that when we are practicing good, we are we can interfere in the causes of evil we set in motion yesterday, thereby neutralizing them and restoring our equilibrium, without really going deeply into understanding remembering what evil we caused yesterday. So charity and worthwhile learning, faith and goodwill, optimism and work, art and constructive meditation are renewing themes whose merit we must not neglect in the rehabilitation of our ideas and on our destinies. Okay? Elmo, anything here?
No, João. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, so we're going to the last part, which is, it goes a little bit further into an example of these workers and the example that Druso had. Go ahead, Soraya.
Okay. Druso made a longer pause and eager to learn more. I asked him if he himself had ever taken part in a process of collective expiation, in which the spirits in question had no other recourse except a violent discarnation as a conclusion of their days in the physical body. He answered promptly, I can recall a few significant cases like that, but I will tell you about just one because we have pressing work to do. After a few seconds of calling upon his memory, he began benevolently. 30 years ago, I enjoyed the company of two selfless benefactors to whom I owe a lot of this shelter of light. Ascanio and Lucas, two highly respected assistants in spheres higher than this one, were part of a team of valorous and beloved mentors. When I first met them, they had already spent many years helping wayward, suffering brothers and sisters. Enlightened and kind, they were tireless co-workers in our best endeavors. However, after decades of struggle in the battles of sacrificing fraternity, they longed to be admitted to the higher rim so that they can develop their ideals of sanctity and beauty. But they didn't display the conditions needed for the flight, since they were completely absorbed in the enthusiasm of teaching the pathway of the good to others. They hadn't even thought of delving into their own past. It just so happened that quite often, while enthralled with the splendors of the summit, we are not always inclined to examine ourselves in the midst of the valley. Accordingly, they began to ardently desire ascension, but they felt somewhat disappointed by the lack of support from the authorities, who failed to acknowledge the merit they needed. Since this impasse couldn't be broken, one of them requested a decision from general oversight, to which we are all subject. The petition went through the ordinary channels until at a certain point both of them were called in for a hearing. Their lack of merit was kindly analyzed by authorities from the higher planes, who regressed their memories to the very remote times. Several individuals' records were extracted from their memotic field in a manner similar to radioscopic in today's earthly medical field, and through them important conclusions came to light. Indeed, Ascanio and Lucas had earned extensive credit over nearly 5 centuries of worthwhile learning experiences, including their last 5 incarnations in the flesh and their stays in the spirit world's assistance stations close to the earth. However, when the probe reached their activities in the 15th century, something emerged that brought back a painful remembrance. Wounding them deeply in their spirits, the magnetic procedure extracted from their memory archives the scenes of dreadful crime committed by both in 1429, soon after the liberation of Orleans, when they were members of Joan of Arc's army. Eager for influence before their brothers in arms, they didn't hesitate to murder 2 fellow soldiers. While in territory of Gantienias, they pushed them off the top of a fortress into filthy moat, thus feeling humiliated by the honors that later would bring them awful remorse after the grave. At this point of the disquieting investigation, due to the respect they inspired, they were asked by the competent authorities if they wanted to continue the probe. They both declined, preferring to pay off their debt before delving into further into the depositories of the unconscious. Hence, instead of continuing to insist on ascending to higher levels, they asked to return to the physical realm, where they had just recently finished paying off their debts. However, how? Asked Hilario, intrigued. Due to the inner moral resources they had accumulated, they were able to choose their trial, so they opted for the careers in the field of aviation, offering their lives to its development. 2 months ago, they returned to our plane of service after after having suffered the same mortal fall they had inflicted on their companions back in the 15th century. Did you visit them while they were preparing for their latest reincarnation? I asked respectfully. Yes, I met them several times before their departure. They were associated with a large community of spirit friends in a department specializing in reincarnation, where hundreds of spirits with depths more or less similar to theirs were also preparing to return to the physical realm, embracing redemptive tasks and collective expiations. Were all of them able to choose the kind of trial in which they would balance their accounts? I asked with natural interest. Not all of them, said Druso with certainty. Those who already had a lot of moral credits, as was the case with these two benefactors, had that right. Thus, I saw many of them preparing themselves for violent death to help the progress of aviation, engineering, maritime, and ground transportation, medical science, and industry in general. I could see, however, that because of their depths and according to the imperatives of their own consciences, most of them didn't have such a prerogative. They had to willingly accept bitter trials in childhood, adolescent, or old age, involving various kinds of accidents that ranged from light mutilation to death in order to redeem grave wrongdoings. What about the parents? Asked Hilario anxiously. What is the situation of the parents of those who have to be immolated in the name of progress or justice for their redemption? Won't their suffering be duly considered by the powers that control our lives? Most certainly, replied the instructor. The spirits in need of such expiatory struggles are led to those who were their accomplices in crime, whether in the recent or the distant past, or to parents who failed their children in times past, so that in the cruel longing and unspeakable anguish, they may learn the respect, devotion, and honor and love that we all owe to the institution of the family on earth. Collective suffering is a medicine that corrects our mutual wrongs. There was a long pause. The lesson compelled us to take a quick look at our inner worlds. Hilario, however, as curious as ever, pressed the issue. Dear instructor, let's imagine that after their victory, Ascanio and Lucas continue to aspire to ascend to higher spheres. Will they have to consult their past again? If they do not display the specific condition required, they will be submitted once more to the process of examination and the selection of any new expiatory trials that may be necessary. Does that mean that no one may ascend to heaven without having fully paid all their debts on the earth? Druso smiled and concluded. It would be more accurate to say that no one can ascend to the fullness of heaven without having paid everything full on the earth, since gradual ascension can happen, although invariably depends on the merits of accomplishments already achieved. The principles of relativity suit the topic perfectly. The more heaven we have within our soul through the sublimation of life, the broader the soul's incursion into heaven outside, until it achieves final communion with God, our Father. We know that to do it is essential to comply with justice, and divine justice is unquestionably connected to us, since we cannot be truly happy without the implicit approval of our conscience. The teaching was profound. We had no more questions, and because Druso had urgent matters to attend to elsewhere, we headed back to Mansao's temple in order to pray and ponder.
Thanks, Zoraida. That's the end of it. Good job. So it's a long passage here, but it's only one case that they asked. If they asked if Druso had himself ever taken part in the process of collecting expiation, which is a violent discarnation of a group of people, right? And he tells, Druso talks about one case of 30 years before that he joined the company of two selfless benefactors, Ascanio and Lucas. Ascanio is not a common name in Brazil. I never heard of this name, but Lucas is a common name in Brazil. So they talk about these two respected assistants in spheres higher than this one, meaning above the mention of peace. They were part of a team of valorous and beloved mentors, and they've been working for several years, helping suffering spirits, and they were, working tireless. But eventually, they started wonder if they could go higher, right? If they could go to higher realms. We all want to move higher, to progress, right? We will all want to evolve spiritually. So, of course, after working for a very long time, they want to go higher. And Druso explains here that because they were so focused on going higher, they were not inclined to look inside themselves, to look into their past. I heard a comparison this week that I liked very much in terms of our progress, right? When you're driving a car, you are looking forward all the time because you need to pay attention to the road. But from time to time, you look at the mirror to see what's happening behind you, if nothing, nothing out of the ordinary or disturbing, or cars that want to pass you. So you cannot be looking in the mirror at all times because you're going to crash. But you cannot be looking all the time only ahead without looking in the mirror. This is more or less what we have to do with our lives, with our incarnations. We have to look ahead, but we have to reflect on our imperfections so we can address them. So these two individuals, Ascanio and Lucas, they were focused on helping others, which, they are acquiring merits on top of merits on top of merits. Nothing wrong there. But to go even further, again, we know that we have to reincarnate until we reach perfection. They reached a point that they needed reincarnation. So they asked for the reasons they couldn't go much further, and they were shown the reason in the past, right? So they've been working for many years, they said here 5 centuries of acquiring credit over learning experiences, last 5 incarnations in the flesh. It doesn't mean that they were missionaries on the 5 incarnations, but they did their job in the last 5 incarnations. They did continue growing and evolving. Now, when they went there and looked at the past, they found that in the 15th century, they are members of Joan of Arc's army, and I highlighted here because there is a beautiful book by Leon Denis that was recently published by the United States Spiritist Federation, Joan of Arc Medium, that tells her story. It is worth reading for those who haven't read it yet. So they were part of her army, and they committed, they murdered 2 fellow soldiers, and of course, after the grave, they had the remorse. So when they reached that level, they were asked if they want to continue to look in their past, and declined, because again, we meet our past when we have the ability to deal with. When we talk about remembering our past, when we go back to the spiritual world, we will remember it according to our necessities and according to our ability to deal with it. As I mentioned many times here, if we are not even able to deal with the mistakes we made in this present life, to go over all the mistakes that we made in previous lives when we were worse than this one, because this is the best version of ourselves, we are not going to be happy, and we may not be able to deal with it. So you see clearly these two individuals, they went to the first cause of their struggles and could not go further into researching it. So they asked for reincarnation to return to the physical realm, and because of their merits, their inner moral resources, they were able to choose their trial. So they chose to a career in aviation and offering their lives to die in a plane accident as they are developing aviation. And 2 months ago, they returned to our plane. So we can imagine that they die in a plane accident around the Second World War. Doesn't say if it was during the Second World War when aviation was first used profusely in the battles, but maybe not. Maybe they were just working on developing airplanes and died on an accident testing in an airplane. So Druso mentions that he met them before their departure. They were, of course, in a large community in a department specialized in reincarnation, where hundreds of spirits with deaths more or less similar to theirs were also preparing to return to the physical realm. In the beginning of the chapter, I mentioned 150,000 souls discarnate, return to the spiritual world every day. Around 200,000 are born every day throughout the world. So you can imagine the department specialized in reincarnation throughout the spiritual plane is very busy all the time. Of course, the majority of reincarnations follow the natural law. It doesn't need any special preparation. We study this. They are just they go through the natural process. But these specialized cases, like these two individuals, goes to a special department specialized in reincarnation. But not all of them could choose. Only those who already had a lot of moral credits, as was the case with these two. So all of them were preparing themselves for a violent death in these fields of aviation, engineering, maritime, ground transportation, medical science, industry in general. But most of them didn't have the ability to choose their destinies because they didn't have the moral credits. They had to accept the bitter trials, and of course the family was involved. And Hilario asks, what about the parents? Which is a very good question, right? Because if someone is going to die at a young age or going to be mutilated or going to have accidents, what's the role of the parents in this? And Druso explains that the spirits in need of such expiatory struggles are led to those where there are accomplices in crime, whether in the recent or the distant past. So, or parents that fail their children in past. So, through their suffering, their anguish, they may learn to respect, devotion, and honor and love that we all owe to the institution of family on earth. That collective sufferings is the medicine that corrects our mutual wrongs. So Hilario then asks if Ascanio and Lucas will continue to ascend to higher sphere or continue to want to ascend, or they will have to consult their past again. And Druso asks, if they do not display the condition, they will be submitted once again. You can evolve through love. You can pay your debts through love. You may not need to go through the exact case that you went through for you to pay your debt, because you can evolve by doing the good work, by helping others, by internalize the moral evolution that we all are willing to achieve, and with that erase our past without really having to look at our past in detail. So that's when I mentioned that if we can face our past without traumatizing ourselves, then we'll see our past, but will be at a stage that we can already look at it without causing any trauma. So the answer here is, if they evolve enough to look at their past without being traumatized by it, then that's fine, they can move forward. But if they still cannot evolve enough to deal with the mistakes they may have the necessity to go again, look at their past, to realize specifically what they need to deal with. So Druso says here that no one can ascend to the fullness of heaven without having paid everything in full on earth. Having paid in full, it doesn't mean an eye for an eye. It means we can repair our debts by doing good, by practicing charity, by internalizing this evolution in ourselves, in where it becomes a part of who we are. The more heaven we have within our soul through the sublimation of life, the broader the soul's incursion into the heaven outside. So we will evolve, move to higher planes naturally until we reach the final communion with God our Father. So it is a very good explanation of what happens on our path to evolution and our necessities and the reasons for collective trials. Very interesting chapter. Any final comments here, Elmo?
Yeah, just one last comment. When we hear the collective trials, we immediately think of those who experience the phenomenon of death together, a plane crash and a big fire in a building, those kind of things. Now, Druso expands these collective trials not only to those who perish, but the parents, wives, husbands, loved ones, because it is a suffering. Collective suffering is the word that he uses, actually. Collective suffering is not only for those who die in those events, but there is a lot more suffering even for those who stay behind.
Yes, very well put. Yes, very important here. Okay. Any final comments, questions? Okay, so next Sunday, second Sunday of the month, we're going to go back to the study of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Okay. And I think that is all for us. Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, John, for hosting, and thank you, Elmo, as well. Thank you, Sarita, for reading for us today, and also everyone who is here. Thank you for being here and participating. Infinite Creator and Divine Providence, we give thanks to be together for our studies of the book Action and Reaction, Chapter 18, Collective Expiations. A group of accidental deaths is a collective discarnation and requires trained workers to assist in the specialized relief effort. These spirits will be assisted in a timely fashion as needed, to be released and separated from their physical bodies. Eventually, everyone will receive help. However, some will be spiritually mature, open, and ready to receive assistance immediately, as they are less attached mentally to their own life and the physical realm. They are also morally elevated. Pardon me. The death of the body and separation at death of the body is a process unique to each soul. Approximately 150,000 souls discarnate each day. Reparations and debts acquired on earth will be repaid through the reincarnation process. either collectively or individually, in order to progress. We inwardly reflect and look ahead also, and may we be vigilant and balanced each day with our love. Excuse me. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all of our participants. Pardon me. We pray for inner peace, and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, light, peace, service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.